I think the biggest value that I remember was respect for your grandparents, your aunts and uncles. I remember going to my grandmother's house, my mother coaching us on the way to make sure we kissed our grandmother, kissed our aunt. And that was really, really instilled, especially respect for your elders. I think the other thing, or the other value, was that all my uncles and some of my aunts, but all my uncles were hardworking men. A couple were upholsterers. Another uncle was a butcher, and they had great work ethic. They instilled that upon us, to work hard, value family, and respect. I think the biggest thing was respect. I think the biggest difference from what you see in Italian movies, especially when it comes to the movies, was, when the movies were portrayed as not always the brightest people. Growing up, but that wasn't as evident. But as you get older, you start to think about your childhood and you say, well, we didn't have that. I don't remember that. They show people, cursing around the table and fighting all the time. And I didn't see any of that growing up. And I don't think any of my friends did either. The whole mafia thing, at a young age, I didn't realize. I mean, there were some people that I later on knew were in the mafia, but they weren't the type of people that you see. They were very, very low key. Yeah, I guess they made their money in ways that weren't always quite legal, but they certainly weren't running around shooting people and things like that. I didn't grow up in an Italian American neighborhood, although we used to go to my grandparents once or twice a week, which was Corona, Queens, New York, very Italian neighborhood. So Italian that, that's the language that you heard. You'd walk down the street and, you'd hear people, most people speaking Italian. Everybody's grandmother was alive and they were all speaking either in Italian or probably most likely a dialect. We thought it was Italian, but it was probably a dialect. But, the pork store, the bakery, most of the places were owned, the funeral parlors, most of the places all had Italian names on it. And everybody knew each other. Everybody was friends with each other. And the feasts, there were a couple twice a year. And one used to be right on my grandmother's block, so you would hear the Italian music, and they'd be making announcements in Italian. And, the stands were, pizza and zeppola and sausage and things like that. So it was great fun. I didn't make wine with my grandfather. However, I do remember as a young boy, maybe 5 or 6 or something like that, when my grandfather was probably still making the wine with the help of my uncles. I do remember boxes and boxes of grapes showing up one fall and then pressing it down in the basement. I remember on both grandparents' houses being given wine, a little bit of wine with water. I think most Italians back then did that. It was pretty normal. I was also drinking espresso at probably 8 or 9 years old. I do remember getting a little bit of wine, and if you tried it without the water, it would knock your socks off, that's for sure. At picnics and at the beach, probably almost always Italian food. Picnics, sometimes, my uncle would be barbecuing and he'd make a chicken with probably some sort of Italian dressing, but we'd be having Italian sausages and things like that from the barbecue. In my grandmother's backyard, there was always bowls of spaghetti. Very, very little American food, that's for sure. At the beach, we would go with eggplant parmesan and sausage and peppers, and we used to laugh because you look at the blanket next to you, and the non-Italians would be eating bologna sandwiches and peanut butter and jelly. So we had that special kind of meal. It was always fun to have the non-Italian friends come over, especially when you had a girlfriend or my cousins, my female cousins had a boyfriend that wasn't Italian. You used to have to coach them. Don't eat so much at the beginning. They'd be filling up on antipasta or pasta, and we'd be telling them, no, wait, this is only the beginning. We're going to be here for 4 or 5 hours. You have to pace yourself. I always remember my Aunt Mary telling us kids, don't fill up on bread. So that was the lesson for the Italian kids, because we used to start eating bread or trying to dunk it in the sauce. What did I take away from my heritage? As I said before, I think certainly respect. You know, the old country wasn't spoken about that much, which I wish it was. I wish I had known more. I wish I had thought to ask my grandparents more about what their life was like in Italy growing up and why they came and things like that. But I was at the younger end of the family, so my grandparents were older by then, and I just didn't think to ask, which I'm sorry to say I didn't. I think as I've gotten older, especially in the last 10 years or something like that, the Italian heritage is so rich. And in America, we don't get that message across. Italian art, history, food, and things like that are so rich. And I don't think the Italian Americans, for the most part, are given enough credit in this country for their contributions. I mean, certainly I grew up with 4 uncles who all fought in World War II. I think the biggest thing that everyone I talk to over the years about their Italian heritage is respect and the love of family.